What makes a book an autumn read? I have no idea, except vibes. I've compiled a list of 15 books that I consider to be autumn reads. That might mean that they are suitable for Halloween, that they are spooky, that they are gothic, that they are creepy. It might also mean that they are kind of comfortable, something that you'd like to read on a park bench while wearing a scarf and nursing a takeaway coffee, or reading by the fireside in an old cottage while the nights draw in. Something like that. Something that is cozy and warming and soothing as you watch the colours change, or something that is going to shock you and frighten you and make you feel uneasy because it's spooky season. And then a few wildcards, things that just feel Halloweeny, or feel autumnal, feel chilly and nice. These are autumn vibes, books with autumn vibes. Let's go. Now, some of the books I want to talk about I have with me, and some of them I don't. One of them I thought I had, and I can't find it, and I'm kind of upset about that, but we'll get to that. Let's start with a book I don't have. We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. In many ways, this is the ultimate Halloween read. I actually read it last Halloween, while I was in Bath for a week. Perfect setting, perfect scenario, perfect place to read it. It was magnificent. We Have Always Lived in the Castle is Shirley Jackson's magnum opus. It is a twist on Gothic themes. It is even in some ways a twist on the vampire mythology. You've got a family of people who have been shunned by their local small American community. They live in a big house on the outskirts and people think they're really weird and don't really like talking to them. They are kind of vampires in their world. Their parents died, and you're looking at the world from the perspective of the youngest sister, Mericat, who uses her own form of witchcraft to put little wards around the edges of their land to ward away other people. There's a lot going on about their family and what happened to their parents, how they died and why they died, etc. It's creepy, it's atmospheric, it is very still and quiet and makes you feel uneasy and a little frightened all the way through. Frightened of the very people whose heads you are in throughout the entire story. We Have Always Lived in the Castle is frightfully atmospheric. It is a perfect autumn read. Continuing with the Gothic theme is a book that I do have on me, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, her only novel, and one of my favourite books ever. In terms of classic literature, I have two favourites, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley and this. Wuthering Heights is the ultimate Gothic read for autumn. The setting of Wuthering Heights on the Yorkshire moors is perfection. A rugged wasteland of sparse trees, old stone walls, old isolated cottages, grey cloudy skies overhead. It's perfect for autumn. The characters are as grizzled and gnarled and hateful and angry and isolated as the setting itself. Ultimate Gothic. These are horrible people being horrible to each other in the guise of some sort of lustful, fantastical romance that doesn't really exist. It is a romantic Gothic novel for the ages, a perfect book to read during the autumn period, especially around spooky season because there are ghosts in it. It is a haunting. There are genuinely supernatural things in it that people don't talk about enough. If you've never read Wuthering Heights, it is spooky, it is frightening at times, and it is so wonderfully dark and atmospheric and horrible. It is the autumn book. Next is a book that I unfortunately don't have on me, and I should because it's by my favourite author ever, and in my opinion it's his best book, The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. The Remains of the Day is also a wonderful autumn read because it captures that romantic English countryside kind of vibe. It's about a butler who has worked as a butler at this one country manor for decades, and his father worked there as well. At the beginning of the novel, he gets a letter from an old colleague slash friend slash potentially missed lover opportunity, and he finds out that she is living across the country and she might be in a kind of unhappy marriage. And then his new boss, a man who bought the house, an American, says that he's going back to the States for a little business trip, and Stevens, our protagonist, should take the opportunity to borrow the car and go on a road trip. Go on a holiday somewhere. Go on, Stevens, off you go. So he does. He hops in the car and he drives to see his old friend and potentially missed opportunity flame thing. And as he drives along country roads, the English countryside, watching the rolling hills and the small villages pass him by, he reminisces on his life, his job, his work, his attitude, his friendships, his relationship to his father, everything. So it's a book about nostalgia. It's also a book about Englishness, in the sense that our protagonist is a frustrating and annoying conservative traditionalist man who has been unable to move forward with the times at his own detriment. He has in many ways spoiled his own life by being too rigid and conservative. I love Remains the Day. It's such a great autumn read because it's about a man travelling through the pretty English countryside. And it's soothing, and it's about nostalgia, and it captures that autumn feeling of watching the world change and thinking back on the summer, and you feel nostalgic in the autumn. It's a perfect read for that. Next up is The Manningtree Witches by A.K. Blakemore. This is also one of my favourite books. I love this book for how lyrical and beautiful it is. Blakemore, before writing this debut novel, was a poet. I guess still is a poet, but there is poetry in it. It is incredibly poetic. The prose moves and flourishes and is gorgeous and at times overblown, sort of melodramatic, but in a good way, in a way where you can tell she has command over what she's saying and there is depth and weight to it. It is set in the 17th century in Essex, in a town called Manningtree, which really exists. And this is at the height of witch hunts, witch finders, paranoia about witches around every corner, all across Europe and North America. And this is a very feminist book about sisterhood. Our protagonist is a young woman living in a village where all the men went off to war and pretty much died, and now it's just a village of women. And a man comes along to kind of fuck everything up, as men tend to do. Manningtree Witches is short, it is gorgeous, it is set in the English countryside, in the past, in an old rustic village, so it's got those autumn vibes, because when I think autumn, I think English countryside, where I grew up, and that's what this is. It is a book about rural life, paranoia, and the bonds between people who live in a small, close-knit community. Perfect for autumn. Next is my favourite Argentinian book by my favourite Argentinian author. I read it on my Kindle, so I don't have it. The Wind That Lays Waste by Selva Almada, translated by Chris Andrews. Oh, I love this book. The Wind That Lays Waste is a great book for autumn because it's Gothic, because it is about isolation. It is a small group of people who hate each other and spend all their time arguing. It has real Waiting for Godot vibes, if you've ever watched that play. It begins with a preacher, a travelling preacher, and his daughter. Their car breaks down, and so they get it fixed by this nearby mechanic. They're driving through the isolated wastes of Argentina, and they have to spend a few days living with this mechanic and his apprentice while the car gets fixed up. The mechanic is an atheist, and the preacher is a preacher. And it's them just at each other's throats the whole time. It's a book about toxic masculinity, about the impact we have on the children that we're supposed to be looking after, the ways in which men and their opinions and their values and their boisterous attitudes gets in the way and spoils a lot of things for them and for the people around them. And it's also just about religion, about a religious man versus an atheist arguing and fighting. And it ends with a scene of pathetic fallacy that is so perfect for autumn. This is a very pseudo-Gothic, dramatic, powerful, theatrical, tiny little novel that is perfect for autumn. Another classic that is of course perfect for spooky season is Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is my copy. It's got grey sprayed edges. I love this thing. It's beautiful. And I haven't read Dracula in quite a while. It's been like 5 or 6 years and I really need to reread it. But Dracula is of course perfect for spooky season. I don't think I need to explain why. It is a perfect Gothic novel. It is the quintessential vampire novel. It is full of romance and drama and a big adventure and vampires and castles and spooky, Gothic, murderous, bloodlust, sexy stuff. It is very sexual, it is very exciting, and if you've never read Dracula because you think, well, it's old and modern vampire books are probably a bit more exciting, no. This is exciting. Dracula is absolutely a rip-roaring adventure full of drama and melodramatic Gothic language. It's over the top, it is camp, it is theatrical, it is beautiful, it is so great for Halloween, and it's a decent size, so read it through October, drink it in, and really enjoy it. Sink your fangs into this book. Next is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is just vibes. I cannot really argue that this is autumnal because it's not set outside at all. And I can't argue that it's spooky or Gothic either. This is a book about a himbo who's a really sweet and lovely boy who's lost in a strange maze, a big house, and he doesn't know why. I don't really want to tell you too much about Piranesi because the mystery is what it's all about, but I do have a dedicated video on it if you want to go watch that. I adore Piranesi. It is all good vibes. It's lovely. It's such a sweet and wholesome book, and the way that it's told, the mystery as it unfolds, the layers and layers that get peeled back, it's just delicious. And it's also nice and short. You can read it over a weekend, and it just has autumn vibes because of its tone, because of its themes, because of its character. Its protagonist, Piranesi, is just the most delightful person that you want to hold and look after. It's just so charming, and autumn is all about being charming and sweet and warm, and that's what this book is. But if you want something that's not sweet and warm at all, Lapvona by Otessa Moshe. This is one of my favourite books of 2022. I enjoyed the hell out of this book. It is gnarly, it is gross, it is disgusting, it is twisted, it's monstrous, and it's everything that a good, weird, medieval fantasy thingy should be. You've got a house on a hill with a spoiled, rich, horrible man living in it, lording over all of the serfs who are just tilling the soil and dealing with natural disasters. You've got nasty, horrible people doing nasty, horrible things to each other. You've got a village wise woman who is maybe a witch and has literally nursed all of the people in the village. It's wild, it's twisted, it's strange. It is poking at the medieval serfdom, fiefdom world. And for an autumn book, it's perfect because it's creepy and weird. It's dark, it's dramatic, it matches the dramatic aesthetic flair that autumn has as the nights draw in, as the skies become cloudy, as the leaves change and fall from the trees. Lapvona has that vibe, and it's gorgeous. Now, murder mysteries feel appropriate for autumn, and I would recommend a bunch of Agatha Christie books, but I'm going to save those for winter. Winter is when you read Agatha Christie. So, I still want to include murder mysteries. I have two, and one of them is, again, kind of a wild card within that genre, and that is Out by Natsuo Kirino, translated from the Japanese by Stephen Snyder. This is a really twisted, bloody, nasty, horrible book. It is about 4 women who work in a factory, packing sandwiches. They work the night shift and their lives are utterly miserable. They go home to abusive, horrible men, and one of them finally snaps and strangles her husband with his own belt while their children are in the other room. And then the other women help her hide the body, help her cover it all up. And it is full of blood and guts and drama. The Yakuza get involved. It's got moneylenders and the most crooked underbelly of Tokyo society. It is really frightening and horrible, and it's a twist on the murder mystery because we are following the murderers and kind of rooting for them. It is a twisted, feminist, angry, horrible, bleak novel, and a really, really good autumn read for all of those reasons. The other murder mystery, which I guess is a little bit more traditional in that sense that I want to talk about, is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This was his debut novel, and it is an absolute doozy. It is a wonderful, fantastical, science fiction-y twist on the murder mystery. Okay, I just had to sort out a thing. Where was I? This book is really good. Murder mystery, guy wakes up in a different body, and he doesn't remember anything, and he is charged with moving through 8 different bodies, like a video game player moving from protagonist to protagonist, over the course of 8 days to try to save the titular Evelyn Hardcastle as she repeatedly gets killed, and then he has to wake up on the same day, Groundhog Day situation, in a different body, and try again, and slowly figure out how in the world she's being killed and who's killing her and how she survives. It's really fascinating, and it's big and it's fun, and I love this book. I need to read it again because I really don't remember a lot of it. But it's fun. It's fun. Brilliant murder mystery. Mind-twistingly clever. Another witchy book, which I also don't have on me, I might have given away my copy, is Cunning Women by Elizabeth Lee. I talked about this during my Witchtober series that I did in October 2021. Cunning Women is very similar to The Manningtree Witches, but it's a little bit more happy. It's a beautiful, historical, feminist novel about witchcraft, but it's quite romantic. It's a tale of forbidden love. A young woman who is part of a family of women who live on the outskirts of a village and are shunned for being wise, cunning women. She falls in love with the local farmer's son, a boy called Daniel, I think. Sarah and Daniel, I think those are their names. She falls in love with him, his brother's an arsehole, his dad's an arsehole. Witchfinders are about, and obviously the cunning women are targets of witchfinders, witch hunters. And there's a lot of Romeo-Juliet romance involved in it. It's really sweet and warming. It's a lot like The Manningtree Witches, not quite as well written, a little bit more fun and commercial and romantic with a lot of positive vibes in it, but it's still a great feminist witchy book that's perfect for autumn. And then we have the book that defined the dark academia genre, and that is Donna Tartt's The Secret History. Set in Vermont, the most beautiful state in the United States when it comes to autumn and all of the leaves changing and stuff. It's set in an Ivy League-style university full of rich kids. Our protagonist is a boy from California. He's poor, he's ended up at this college, good for him, and because he likes Greek, he ends up hanging out with this pompous group of awful rich boys who all like to sit and talk about Greek and Greek stuff. But they also like to take drugs and get high and commit accidental murders and also non-accidental murders. It is horrible, beautiful dark academia, one of the most beautiful books I've ever read in terms of its prose. It is poetic, it is magnificent, it is gorgeous, every single word has weight and beauty to it. Absolutely stunning. The fact that Donna Tartt wrote this as her debut novel when she was about 29, 30 years old is amazing. It is so gorgeous. If you've never read The Secret History, it is dark, it is bleak, it is gorgeous, perfect autumn vibes. Absolutely recommend The Secret History. One of the greatest American novels of the last 50 years. The book that I mentioned at the beginning that I can't find and I'm sad about is Mordu by Alex Feby. I wanted to include a fantasy novel in here other than Lapvona, and it was kind of a struggle. I couldn't figure out what to include. Mordu's amazing. It is a dark and gritty Lovecraftian fantasy that I wholly recommend. I'm not really going to tell you any more, because I feel like this video is getting very, very long, but check out Mordu. As fantasy books go, I can't think of a better one for the autumn. And then finally, I recommend Cho Miao Jin's Notes of a Crocodile. This is a dark, bleak book about depression, about being a lesbian in a homophobic world, about toxic relationships, toxic friendships. It is a gorgeous Taiwanese novel translated by Bonnie Huie. I love this book. It is a legendary novel in the lesbian canon, in the world of books about depression and mental health and mental illness, and in the Taiwanese canon of wonderful literature. It is sad and bleak and weirdly comforting if you struggle with your own mental health and queerness. A great autumn read. Okay, that's it. That's it. I rushed through the last few because I was getting very paranoid that this video was way too long. Sorry about that. But I wanted to get through 15 books, and I think I did. I think that was 15. Enjoy! If you disagree with any of these, let me know very loudly in the comments. It'll be fun. And if I've sparked your imagination, I hope you enjoy these autumn reads. Subscribe for books.